Hey, this is Meridith Elliott, Powell. You know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, my favorite time of the week. It is time for Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to be more effective at this skill that we call sales. I'm hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter. Mark, been a good week?
Been a good week, having fun, and we've got a great show planned. We're going to talk about, what channel should you be in to really reach your customer? We got a great question, great book. It's going to be a good show.
Let's rock and roll.
Prospect with integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic. And we come to you every single Saturday morning. And before Mark tells you everything that we have on tap for today, I always like to tell you how the show works because we want you, the audience, to be a part of this show. So we start off every week with a question from you. That's how we choose the topic. That's what we center on, and that's what we focus on. We recommend a book. And because we want you to leave with return on investment, we have a lightning round. So Mark, what do we got?
Well, the topic is, choosing the most effective sales channels. So the question comes to us from Nathaniel in the Philippines. It says, I've been in sales for more than 10 years, but I'm changing industries. Not sure where to start. My colleagues use so many different strategies to sell: in-person, phone, social media, email, trade shows. How do I figure out what is right for me and most effective in hitting my goals? Okay, so I threw that into the Sales Logic brain. And I'll tell you what, audience, if you're not part of the mastermind, you got to go out to saleslogicpodcast.com right now. Check out everything that's in the mastermind because it is just a great program. We continue to have so much great stuff. Anyway, the brain said, first of all, understand your target market. Where's your target market hanging out at? That's where you got to be. That's what drives everything. And another one it talks about is leverage your strengths. Because, if you don't know how to swim, don't get in the pool. Know where your strengths are and leverage that. Mayor, I'm sure you've got a lot of ideas.
Yeah, first thing I want to say is congratulations to your colleagues. I mean, they're using other channels. And probably a big mistake that a lot of I see salespeople make is that they're still doing sales in a very traditional manner. So anybody listening to, to this podcast, understand that a channel is just an extension, and you need to be using multiple channels. Now, Mark said something really important there, and that is understand where your target market is located and what channel they prefer. And let me say also what form of communication they prefer. Like, I would venture to guess that if you were going to sell something to Mark really likes the telephone, and that's an effective way to get a hold of Mark. I hate the telephone. The most effective way to get a hold of me is through email. My husband hates the phone and he hates email. The most effective way to communicate and get to him is through text. So, and I even think that though most of my target market is on LinkedIn, how they communicate is very different. So I have to use different strategies based on the person that I'm calling to, which means I have to be versed at a lot of different channels. I don't like the phone, but I use the phone. It may not be my most comfortable, but I use it because for some of my prospects, that is what works for them.
See, you bring up a great point. Everybody has a primary preferred communication method. Now, for salespeople, the sales community as a whole has it's email. It's email. If I just email enough people, if I just send enough people emails, they'll respond. But see, like you brought up, it's not the primary communication method for a lot of people. See, everybody has a primary and they have a secondary. What we have to become versed at is understanding not what our primary is, but what our customers' primary medium is that. You know, it's interesting. Nathaniel didn't bring up, for instance, WhatsApp, which is very, very key. You're in the Philippines. I'm sure WhatsApp is used in a lot of other countries, and even text messaging, because text messaging for a lot of industries, a lot of salespeople can be very effective, and knowing how to use it. But then even breaking it down further, because when we talk about social media, we talk about trade shows, there's so many variations in each one of those that you really got to understand. And here's the deal. You're not going to know until you put your toe in the water and kind of get wet. You really kind of got to throw yourself out there and see. But don't be biased towards what you prefer. This is where salespeople get into trouble. A lot of salespeople don't like picking up the phone. I was talking to somebody, it was yesterday afternoon. And I made the comment, I said, Friday afternoons is absolutely the best time to call. And the person looked at me, it was a Zoom call, as if I was on drugs. And I said, no, because Friday afternoons, I can reach a lot of people on the telephone that I don't normally reach. And again, email has times that work very well and times it doesn't. You got to know what the flow is. I love Natalie's comment. What got you here won't get you there. Always be ready to adjust to the client preferences. So true, because again, the marketplace changes.
Yeah, Spencer's got a great comment here too. Everyone is different. It's more about your content offer than the tool you use. You know, a content offer is really important too. I mean, Spencer, you're right. If I use email quite a bit, I'm comfortable with email. I like to, I'll use a phone call and then I'll follow up with an email. But I'm very, very conscious of what's working in my subject line, because that's going to determine whether something is going to get open. The other thing I think that you need to realize when you're building a sales strategy is that just because a channel doesn't get response, it can be a warm-up channel. And what I mean by that is I just had somebody contact me yesterday about an opportunity, and they follow me on LinkedIn. And what I've noticed is they've gotten warmed up to who I am and what I do and what my beliefs are and what I talk about. And that has made them comfortable then to use the phone. It also works in reverse, because people follow me on LinkedIn or they see me on Instagram. When I reach out and make a phone call, even though that phone call seems cold on my part, it isn't cold on their part because they have some knowledge of me. You know,
that's so key. It's really what I refer to as 3D selling, three-dimensional selling, because again, people are finding us in multiple ways. For instance, trade shows. I hear a lot of companies push back on trade shows. We're not going to spend $1 on trade shows, but sometimes a trade show creates awareness that may not pay out there at the trade show, but it may pay out later on. Same thing with social media. Like you said, you use LinkedIn, Instagram. I do too. I do a lot of YouTube videos and so forth. And it may be that that's what kind of softens them up. That's what creates awareness. And then when I reach out to them by way of telephone or email, it works. But you said something also that was very, very critical. The subject line. So key. Because again, what we fail to realize is when we're crafting a message or we're going to call somebody, we get into the whole context of what it is. And you know what? If we don't capture them in the first 2 seconds, that subject line, the first 5, 6 words, we've lost them. Same thing with a phone call. We may have some great questions we want to ask them, but if we can't get past that first 5 seconds, we're not going to be able to keep them on the call. We've got to really up our game in terms of how we are immediately reaching in. I love Jack Hubbard. Jack, great to have you chiming in. Don't forget video messaging on LinkedIn. Exactly. You can video message right on LinkedIn. It's a warm way to have a conversation. He says, I do 3 a day and my response rate is 67%. Stop and think about that. That's huge. Thank you, Jack, for sharing.
Yeah, no better sales guru out there than Jack Hubbard. I was going to mention, I'm so glad that Jack brought up video messaging too, because I think as salespeople, we need to get out of our comfort zones. And we've got to really remember that it is not a product or a service that we are selling. what we're selling is what we can bring to the table. And video is so powerful in really getting that messaging across. So that leads to the question, what the heck do you put in a video message? Well, you don't put in a video message, hi, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. I work quite a bit in your industry and I'd love to talk to you about selling you this. No, you've got to approach that video message from a value add standpoint. What can you bring to the table? I want you to remember, no matter what channel you're using, the question in your prospect's mind is, why should I give this person my time? And however you reach out, you need to be able to answer that question first. To Mark's standpoint, you've got to do it quickly.
Which brings up a good point, because video, love video. But you know what's funny? People send me video messages. I don't open them. I don't open them. See, so it could be preferred. I love sending video messages, but I'm guilty as charged. People send me and I don't necessarily open them. See, again, we have to understand what is our preferred and what's the customer's preferred method or secondary. Now, I'm going to challenge every salesperson out there. If you're only using one medium to try, one channel to communicate, you are missing out. You are, don't say, well, I message them by way of LinkedIn because that's the only email I have, or that's the only way I have to connect. Hold it. You've got to be, there are other ways that you've got to connect. So you got to be reaching out to them, because otherwise you are just going to die very quickly.
Yeah. Mark said something, he said something very important that the Sales Logic brain said. And that is that it's like, you have got to reach out there and you have got to figure out where your target market is looking for information, and then use that channel to connect with your target market. And if you don't know the answer to that, then you have not done enough research on your target market. I got a message on Facebook the other day, somebody looking to sell me something. I am probably on Facebook once a week, because the only time I get on Facebook is when I always board planes first. I fly so much, I'm always in the first seating. So I'm on the plane and we probably have 15, 20 minutes before the plane completely loads. That's when I get on Facebook. It's the absolute worst way to reach me. I will always be delayed with a response. However, LinkedIn, I am on a daily basis. I check my LinkedIn constantly. So if you sent me messages through there. So I think what I want you to understand is the channels that we choose to communicate through speak volumes about how much homework and research we have done on that client. Because if you are trying to reach them in a way that isn't comfortable for them, you might as well just be wearing a light bulb that says, I didn't do my homework, and this isn't going to be a very good connection or relationship for you.
Yeah. Now let's break down those social channels there a bit, because you may be B2C and Facebook may actually work for you. Fine. Absolutely. Great. Meridith and I are both very strong B2B. So it's just not a play. Now, what I find interesting is the difference between LinkedIn and Instagram, for instance. Again, depending on the industry you're in, depending on the market you're trying to reach, Instagram can be a very, very effective, even in B2B. And again, it's knowing where your people play. I love Bill's comment here. Have a consistent follow-up cadence. This is so key, because I will see people, they'll go out on LinkedIn and what I call post and ghost. I give that term credit to Bryn Tillman, post and ghost, where they post and then they never respond. Come on. If you're going to play the social media game, remember the first word is social. You've got to be willing to interact with them. Same thing with sending messages. You can't sit there and send messages and necessarily expect them to respond at the time frame you want them to. Because again, like Meridith said that she's only on Facebook once a week. I know a lot of people who are only on LinkedIn, B2B people, tremendous jobs, but they're only on LinkedIn maybe once every couple of weeks. So if I send them a message, it may be a couple of weeks before they respond. I can't, that's just the way it is. That's the way they choose to respond to it.
Another thing I think we need to think about is how long does a channel work? Like, I don't know if you have had this experience, but for me, sometimes first quarter of the year, a certain channel is working really, really well. I'm getting good responses on LinkedIn. My phone calls are getting returned versus I'll get into the second quarter of the year and I'll find that email is more effective for me. So I think the other thing that you need to do is not get stuck in a channel because that channel worked in one quarter of the year. And I think I do believe those channels will change.
Boy, that is so good because the cadence can't be consistent all the way through. Because I'll say, like, the telephone I mentioned earlier, Friday afternoons, I think it works absolutely terrific. How does the telephone work pre and post trade shows? How does it work? Yes, it can work very, very effectively, especially post trade shows. If you've developed a little bit of a relationship, if you've developed a little bit of a relationship with somebody, I can come back and I can ping them. I can reach out to them. Again, the key thing here is using multiple channels with which to reach people, and never give up on one just because they're not responding. They might be viewing you. They're choosing just not to respond.
Yeah. Hitesh, so for you, Instagram is not as effective for sales in India. It's funny. I find I was just about to kind of kill Instagram for me here in the US. I didn't feel much from it, but my social media team really said to me, you'd be surprised how much a fan base follows you on Instagram. And while it may not be the direct seller, it can be the influencer to the seller. So encouraged me not necessarily to give up on it. So I think you're bringing up a really good point, is that there's, I love Mark's term of three-dimensional selling. It's, sales has kind of gone into the marketing arena, and marketing has always been hard because we don't know exactly what works, when it works, or why it works. But if we didn't put coins in every fountain, we wouldn't get the end result.
Hey, I love what you're saying there. And let's talk about trade shows there for a bit, because trade shows take on so many different dimensions. Should I be at a booth? Should I have a display? Do I speak at a trade show in terms of their educational, all those different and again, you got to understand where your customers are. There's no one uniform solution. The biggest problem I see with trade shows is people go in with no strategy. And this is just like an email cadence, or a phone cadence. You got to have a strategy. If trade show is going to be my medium, I just don't show up at the trade show. What's the work I've done ahead of time to reach out to people to try to arrange meetings at the trade show? What's my follow-up strategy after the trade show? Every communication method you use has to have a pre and post plan. Otherwise, you're just wasting. Otherwise, you're busy, but you're not productive.
So true. Jack Hubbard, great comment. If the bank president I'm trying to reach has a gatekeeper in the process of getting an appointment, I always ask the favorite communication channels of the CEO. So smart. Use the gatekeeper to help you understand how that bank president, how your prospect wants to communicate. And Bill Snow says the most successful salespeople are committed to their CRM. Preach it, preach it, preach it, to have a consistent follow-up process through multiple channels.
You know what? I got to pick up on that one, because the question I love asking salespeople when they're calling me, I'm talking to them, is your CRM system open right now on your computer? And it's amazing. Probably about 80, I'm going to start taking a poll. Probably about 85, 90% of the time they say no.
Yeah.
Or they say, yes, it is. And then they admit later, no, it's really not. Yeah. Here's again, your CRM is going to drive so much. Here's a key thing. Let's come back and let's talk about email. Let's talk about phone call. Let's talk about voicemail and all these little things. You got to remember, hey guys, all it is you're just trying to get the next step. You're just trying to get the next step. You don't send over war and peace. I subscribe so strongly to, if I'm sending out a prospecting email, I got to be able to view it in one swipe on my smartphone. If it's longer than one swipe on a smartphone, it's not a smart message, period, because people aren't going to read it. Brevity wins the day.
All right, Mark, I think it is time for the book. We have beat this subject to death.
We have. The book, The Channel Advantage by Timothy Ferre and Lawrence Friedman. Check it out, because it really breaks down all the different channels. So I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that.
Just that it's, I don't know a better book out there on really understanding channels, how to use them most effectively. And I think one of the most powerful pieces of the book is understanding the fact that different channels call for different voices
Yes.
and,
Hey,
and different messages.
before we jump into the lightning round, I got to come back to Sales Logic Mastermind, because again, we got the Sales Logic Expert Exchange. We're doing that once a month. We're doing the coaching calls once a month. There's so much stuff out there. So jump out to saleslogicpodcast.com website and you'll see it there. Okay, lightning round. Are you ready?
I am.
Top 10 ways to negotiate more effectively in sales. Go.
Oh, this is such a good one. I think if you want to negotiate more effectively in sales, you've got to really got to do your homework. You've got to understand who you are negotiating with, what's important and what matters to them.
I'll add to that: sell first, negotiate second. When you do a better job of the discovery call, you'll understand what the true need is that the customer has.
Focus really heavily on building trust. Negotiation, people have to be willing to give something up. And they'll only be willing to give something up if they trust you to deliver on what they most need.
Radical, you got to be prepared to walk away. You have to be at times. You just simply walk away.
Yeah. Number 5, the person who listens more than they talk is usually the one who wins the negotiation. So really, really listen carefully, because when you negotiate, people are telling you so much more than what they're saying with their words.
Make sure that your negotiation is always tied back to the critical need that the customer has. Don't lose focus. There's a critical need that you're helping them solve.
Yeah, figure out what it is that they most want and ensure that what you're asking them to give up is not their biggest priority.
Negotiate over time, not money. There are many other things that you can negotiate over, and many times time has a greater value than even money.
Yeah. Number 9, make sure that you're clear on what you can give up and what you need in the negotiation, so that you're clear as you're talking through. You're able to offer them some small wins to get the big win that you want.
And number 10, don't panic. Don't panic. When the customer sees fear, they know to pounce, and you will lose. Hey, you've been listening to Sales Logic. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. If something we've said has earned you a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the show becomes logical. Or the sale becomes well. The show becomes.
I don't know. I thought that was pretty good. Hey, to our mastermind members, excited to see you Monday at 4:00 for our special session. If you are looking to blow your goals out of the water in 2025, think about joining us at the Sales Logic Mastermind. Until then, we will see you next week right here, 8 a.m. Eastern, for another episode of Sales Logic. Have a great week.